webcreatorpros.com. If you're looking for a professional website at an affordable price, head on over to webcreatorpros.com, type in the promo code TRUTH to save $200 on your first website. webcreatorpros.com. This episode is also brought to you by Kendall Shoulders and his new book, Jesus is a Worm and a Snake Too, among other things. JesusIsAWorm.com. Trust me, don't let the name fool you. We had Kendall on the show to discuss some of the topics mentioned in the books, and it was by far one of the best podcasts that I've ever done. Check it out, JesusIsAWorm.com.
If you would like to sponsor the show or advertise on the Mythicist podcast, you can do so by going to www.mythicist.me and click on Sponsor the Show for more info. If you would like to support the show financially, you can do that also by going to mythicist.me and become a monthly supporter. We appreciate your monthly support. You are now listening to the Mythicist podcast, your portal to the paranormal, streaming live at mythicist.me, your hub for all things spiritual, esoteric, and paranormal. And now, your host, Truth Seeker.
Shalom, shalom. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Mythicist podcast. In this episode, we're speaking with hip-hop artist Kalki about spirituality, syncretism, and we also touch on hip-hop beef a little bit in the spiritual community. Yeah, beef in the spiritual community. I know. Whatever. Kalki, what's going on, brother?
Yo, what's good, man? It's been a while. I'm glad that we're finally doing this again, because last time shit got lost in the ethers, and now it's back on for part 2, so I'm really glad. And we had some really good discussions last time. I think that was 2.5 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. I'm not even sure.
I don't even want to think about it, man. Time flies so fast, dude. It's crazy.
Yeah,
it's been a while.
Thank you so much for having me again, man. Honestly, especially looking at last week, you were interviewing Bone Thugs, man. I was like, God. Yo, that's crazy, man.
Oh yeah, that was beautiful, beautiful stuff. Yeah, moving up, definitely, man. Yeah, that was a good interview that we did. I hate that I lost it, man.
No, but you know what? I love how things will evolve, and now I'll probably have some different things. Because a lot of it, I'm sure we'll touch upon some similar subjects, and it'll move forward, you know?
Yeah, I think so too, because I was trying to go back to remember some of the things that we touched on, so I wouldn't bring it up like it's brand new. But I really forgot a lot of it, you know. So there's been a lot happen from that time to now. So it's like we'll just go with it, man. I know there's a lot to talk about. I'm trying to see what I should bring up, what to go into, but we're just going to have a conversation. That's basically what this show is inspired from, having conversations with different brothers on the phone and just saying at the end of the conversation, man, I wish that, we would have recorded this conversation so other people can hear it. Other people can be edified by this conversation. So that's what the podcast is birthed out of. So that's what we're doing tonight, man.
Yeah, no, and I love that. Honestly, you're one of my favorite persons that even if we haven't had those conversations that often, man. And it's a pleasure to have been able to build with you as well, too. And I'm looking for more of that in the future, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. There's been a lot happened since then. We put out a collab track together that was featured on Lex Lumen's project, man. You want to talk a little about?
Yeah, with Amos. Yeah, definitely. I believe it was Spiritual Motion.
Spiritual Motion, yeah, man.
But yeah, no, I can hear that track rolling in my mind right now. That was really dope, and I was glad to be on that. I'm actually going to make an album out of all the collabs I've done with Amos, since I think I have 6 or 7 tracks now with him. Yeah. So I want to put out a little EP with all the Amos collab tracks. Yeah.
Speaking of that, I'm gonna kind of give the listeners some information about an Amos track that I had. We did a collab track. It was me and a couple other brothers featured on it, and I did the hook. Then I came back and did another version for my album and added a verse to it, and it was a track, Spirit Awakening. Not Spiritual Motion, not Spiritual Alchemy, but Spirit Awakening. Okay. So yeah, it was a really dope hook that I put down. I put down a really dope verse. I loved it. It was on Edgar's album, Psycho Mind. He put out his EP that he did with Amos. And then
and I was on Third Eye on that one.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I put it out on mine too. So I did another version with me on it. It was out, man, probably about a year. Then I started getting flags on YouTube about it, saying that it was, copyrighted by somebody else. And a lot of times when you use these beats off of SoundClick or whatever the case is, or these other producers will sell other people the same tracks, and people will, you know what I'm saying, register them, and everybody's getting paid off of your song. It's a crazy process how it works, especially as an independent artist. But I was getting these flags from this group in Germany, this Gothic group that was putting copyright claims on the song, saying it was theirs. So I just kept fighting it, like, no, that's mine. Like, you know what I'm saying? Amos made the beat. We did the track. It's, you know, it's mine. He said I could use it. So I went back and forth with them a couple times, and they ended up sending me a cease and desist on the track. They had the lawyer send me a cease and desist on the track, and they pulled my album from iTunes because I had that track on there. Yeah, and come to find out, Amos sampled these monks singing that they used from this group in Germany on their project. It was theirs. And he took it and sampled it and changed the tempo and changed the pitch, and it sounded different. He added like a beat to it. It sounded different, but somehow in the sync system, it was able to pick it up. And yeah, I ended up having to take that song off the album and resubmit it without the track, and then I tried to keep the song on YouTube and tried to keep it on all these other things, and they just kept on. It was like, if you don't take this off of every outlet, we're going to take you to court. And I asked them, ridiculous. I asked them if I could use it. I asked them if I could buy licensing or whatever to use the sample. They wouldn't let me pay them or anything, dude, because it was a really dope song. And I ended up having to take it off the album, so a lot of people don't know what happened with that. But I ended up taking that same verse and using it on my latest project, 333. People are hearing the verse and it's like, man, that verse sounds familiar. And so, I took the verse from the song and put it on the new one. So that's what happened with that.
Man. Nobody's been telling me. Somebody told me they'd sue me for the artwork that they made for me because they said that they changed their mind and they didn't want me to have it anymore because they didn't like me anymore. And I was like, well, you gave me that artwork. But they were like, no, I'm going to sue you in court. And I was like, you can try to sue me if you want to, because I'm non-profit. I'm not trying to sell anything. So like, you're going to have a hard time even trying to prove anything in court. But just out of respect, I was like, you know what, I won't use it anymore. But I think it's really juvenile to do those kind of things, you know? Talking about that, actually, I won't delve into it. But
no, let's delve into it.
A lot of beef surrounded.
I want to. Let's do it. Let's do it.
But you know what? I won't get into any personal details. I won't name names because I think everybody that's been following already knows kind of like what's been. I just want to say that honestly, I've tried to kill beef with just about everybody. I'm not a person that likes to like. I know it's impossible. Somebody told me that. My soulmate was telling me today that like, you know, it's going to happen. The more people you end up reaching, the more you're going to end up making enemies. But it just makes me sad sometimes to think that people that I used to be friends with 10 years ago up until like, you know, recently, like a year or something, people that I've been really close to that used to support me like crazy now are saying that, you know, oh, I'm full of myself and this. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm a very arrogant, cocky person from time to time. And other times I can be very humble and I can be it really depends what subject you're talking about. But really, like the main part of that really revolves, and I think that's a subject that's definitely worthy of mention on there. The big part of what's been happening lately, especially on the latest beef that's been happening online with one of my posts, is surrounding the topic of homo, trans, and queer phobia. And the idea of this patriarchy, like these dominant alpha males that, you know, are telling me that, you know, somebody actually called me a weak little bitch on the post because I was talking about how patriarchy is oppressive to women and how, you know, like these guys that are out there saying they make hardcore rap and talking about, you know, excuse the language, but, you know, to quote some of these people saying, you know, like, oh, I'm going to slaughter all these faggots and this and that.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, that's not, I was thinking about that today and I was thinking like, okay, so, you know, KRS-One was talking about, you know, hip hop as being like hip and hop as being intelligent movement or relevant movement, you know, knowledge, you know, combined with rhythm, or rhythm and poetry, if you think of it. But to me, when I think about that, that doesn't, if you're talking about, you know, hateful, ignorant statements that, you know, and you claim to be a spiritual rapper, you claim to be an enlightened person, and you're going about and you're telling people that have a different sexual preference than you or that have a different gender orientation or no gender at all or non-binary concepts, you're telling them that they're evil and they're fucked and they're going to be, that sounds like a Bible thumping redneck or something, someone that's completely misconstruing Christianity, you know? Yeah. It seems like someone to me that like, I'm like, don't say you're a mystic on one side and say that you've mastered all of these, you know, and then start telling me that I'm full of myself because I'm telling you that you're too full of patriarchal energy, and you're oppressing, a bunch of other people in the process of saying you're making spiritual hip hop.
Yeah.
But basically this whole thing revolved, so certain rappers, who were on that side of things, I had to end up kicking some of them off of Revolt Motion because of their statements, because I warned them. I said, listen, I'm not going to publish this music on Revolt Motion if you keep putting out songs like this. I will publish your other albums if you, have albums that are respectful and that are, promoting awareness and equality. But if you're promoting anything like that on some tracks on your album, I'm not going to post up the album. And they got really mad at me and told me, this was really stupid. And so I ended up kicking off a bunch of people off of Revolt Motion. And RMR lately has been actually promoting a lot more female poets, a lot more non-gender binary poets. And it's been kind of going in a way different direction, because I feel like nobody ever, like Son of Saturn is, close friend of mine. I really respect him. He's still an affiliate of RMR, even though he's not involved in the managing anymore. In that sense that he's still in the Friends of RMR section. But, I know that his intention was definitely not to promote an all-male, patriarchal kind of traditional oppressive view of spirituality. And I don't think anybody that's in their right mind is trying to promote that kind of music. So to me, that's really like the heart of the controversy right there. Like in a nutshell, that's what it's all about. And people are trying to make it about something else, and they're trying to make it about me and about, my own perceptions and how I'm being hateful towards hateful people. But I'm sorry, if this was about racism, nobody would even be arguing. Just because it's about homophobia and some people disagree on that subject, and there's still people that consider themselves to be intelligent that are homophobic, it's not an issue. But if these people were saying, well, I'm a Klan member and, I hate black people and I hate Asians and I hate everything, everybody would be like, yo, what the fuck are you talking about? Get the fuck out of here. Like, stop saying shit. But, because that's still a contentious issue somehow, and it's not, completely accepted in the mainstream that, there should be no such thing as discrimination based on gender or sexuality or color of skin or anything. It's become this huge issue. Anyways, that's what I had to say about that.
Well, just let it be known that you didn't call any names. I'm going to call his name. It was Atma. I read the post. I'm familiar with his music. And, I seen how he was doing on that post. I was involved with that whole thing, or watched it go down anyway. But yeah, that's crazy, man. And the whole thing is like, I was let down when I met a lot of these these so-called spiritual MCs, right? That I looked up to, that I was listening to, their music and inspired by them. And I was on my spiritual path. Like, man, these dudes are breaking down meditation. They're breaking down ancient manuscripts and talking about ascending. This is what I'm about, man. This is what I'm called to, and listening to these guys. And then when I meet them or talk to them on the phone, it was like something totally different. And I like wish that I never would have met some of these guys, man. Atma being one of them, because Atma's study and Atma's wordplay is so far past, your average MC. He's he's rapping in Sanskrit and so
he's one of the deepest dudes, man. And that's the thing that's really like, man, same thing. Like, I looked up, the funny thing is he said a while back, he actually called out, he said that me and Rishi were little pussies that copied his style. Yeah. And then I called him out on that, and I said, well, listen, when did you start rapping? Like, your first album officially, like Beyond the Speed of Mind, dropped in 2006. I've got albums that date back to 2000. Like, I started rapping 21 years ago now. I did a show, like the first live hip hop show I did was in 1992, was a cover of House of Pain when I was like 10 years old. And 2 years later, I dropped my first mixtape in 94. So I was rapping back in the days when Chris was still in his golden age. You know what I mean? And then this dude who's like 40 some years old now is telling me that I copied his style because I have the name Kalki, and he's like, well, I have a monopoly over, Dharma Sanatana, or like Hindu hip hop, or like spiritual kirtan hip hop or something. And I don't get that part. Like, and I didn't get the calling out Rishi. Rishi can talk about that too, but he was like, yo, they've been close friends for so long. Me and Atma used to have conversations like 10 years ago on MySpace. I was talking with him and his girlfriend back then. We had like deep conversations about Krishna. The dude was really nice, man. Honestly, like we got along. He would come and drop comments on my page and be like, yo, peace, Kalki Avatar, how are you? This and that. We built on Vimana's project. He used to be a part of Sadhu Militia. He was like on so many different things. But then, the whole thing started, this one post I posted one day, and I was like, listen, I remember hearing like Atma talking about like some shit where he was like, in one of his lyrics, I forget the song, but he's like, yo, why the fuck am I battling you crumbs for? I stab you faggots in the stomach and watch the cum pour.
Yeah,
and
he's had some crazy
and somebody
stuff.
quoted me that again, and I was like, wow. And so I put up a post on Facebook where I was like, I was like, yo, if you're talking about spiritual enlightenment, and at the same time, you're calling other beings faggots and this and that, and you're disrespecting their own sexual preferences, you're not, a slug or a maggot is more enlightened than you are. Like, don't try to claim you're. And he saw the post, and he started writing some threads on there, and he was like, yo, fuck this, man. I don't support unnatural thing. I breed with my queen, and that's all I. And somebody was like, yo, Atma, what's wrong with you, man? Why are you being like this?
Yeah.
He's like, fuck you, faggot. I'll punch you in the face. And then,
yeah.
And in the same breath, like today, he's writing to me, and he's like, you can't fool a mystic. I know you're a fake. You're a fraud. You're a bullshitter. Like this and I'm like, who are you fooling? Because like you're writing all these hateful comments. You're telling me this and that. I'm telling you, chill and just let it be. And you're telling me like all of it. I don't know. It didn't make sense to me. But I would like to say that, like the vast majority of hip hop artists that I've heard of, like, cats like Son of Saturn, like Rishi, like so many other, like Stranded, like Vice Versa, like so many other cats out there. Like I don't even want to, obviously I could name on for centuries. Like Ali Dahesh, one of my best friends.
Yeah.
That dude, man, deep as fuck. Unknown Misery from Babylon War Child. I know so many dudes, fully respectful, fully agreeable with like every form of sentience, every level and density, and they actually live what they speak of. They have their own, of course they're not perfect. They end up drinking once in a while, or, smoking weed and doing some stupid shit sometimes. We all do that. But they're not trying to claim, they're not going out there telling everybody that, they're the ultimate form of spirituality, and then at the same breath, like hating on a bunch of other cats.
Yeah.
So I totally feel what you're saying on that level, man. And it was really disappointing for me too, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he wasn't the only one, you know what I'm saying? But, the thing I had with him as well, I haven't really told anybody, but, you seen, I'm not sure if you knew that was me on the Esoteric Empire page talking about Son of Saturn, right? Calling him a thief.
Oh, yo, no, I didn't even realize. And you know what? And I did that. So that was me.
Yeah.
You got my answer back on that, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Because SOS actually addressed that. And that's why I say SOS, I know he's a good dude. He knows he fucked up in the past. He knows he wasn't perfect. He's told me that more than once. But even I remember him talking on a radio interview saying how, he used to do coke and he was really fucked up and he was stealing money from, not stealing, but like, he was so fucked up that basically he took the money that people were sending him for merchandise, and he didn't have the money to order the merch anymore because he used it for drugs, and so he never, sent it to some people. And I ended up sending some people some copies of his CDs, like some online copies or some merchandise or some stuff. I'd be like, you know what, I'll link you up. And but he came clean with that. He didn't try and Son of Saturn has never been the dude to try to tell people. He's never been that guy that's going around being like, yo, listen to me, I'm so enlightened. He even talks in some of his tracks, and that's one of the reasons why he switched from Son of Saturn to Aquaman, and he dropped that Mystery School Dropout album, because he's trying to say, like, I wasn't worthy of that. Like, I'm a dropout of that school because, like, I don't fit with that ideal. I'm not that spiritual rapper that you think I am. So I got to give him respect for that, man, because honestly, the dude was very honest about it.
Yeah.
And, anybody that asks me, man, I've done some stupid shit. Like, not even, 2 months ago, man, I was drinking too much. I'm not touching alcohol anymore now, but, I still smoke. Yeah, I smoke weed once in a while, and I've done some stupid shit in my past. I've done coke when I was younger, and I've done, I've robbed people. I've done pretty much anything you can think. I've committed 2 armed robberies. I've trafficked, marijuana, mushrooms, a bunch of different things, Never hard drugs. I've never believed in synthetics, and I've never, that's never been my thing. And I didn't want to. I felt like that was corrupting people to do something like that, So it was always herbal, natural remedies.
Yeah.
But still, there's a lot of things that I do that people would say, they've been questionable. And I've definitely behaved in ways, and I've stolen from friends before when I was younger, and I've done things that, So a lot of people think that because of a certain number of things that I've said in my tracks, that I'm this heightened person, that I have all this spiritual. I wanted to clarify too, this idea of Kalki, I took that name a long time. It actually came, I didn't even take the name. I remember writing and looking back now that the album Sands of Time that we just released with Bliss and Antakarana and Erich Tsarion, produced by Aquarius Minded, in that album, I wrote those verses, all of the verses in that album, I wrote over 10 years ago. And there's references in there to Kalki way before I even thought of the name Kalki, or even like had more like I practically had no initiation into Hinduism, into Dharma Sanatana. I didn't know anything about that religion. And somehow these references popped up from whatever book that I had seen them in at some point, and they popped up in my rhymes. And I actually talk about being Kalki like 12 years ago or like 11 years ago before I ever even took that name. So that name kind of followed me for a long time until I wrote the album Dark Ages. And when I finished that album, and I wrote it really, really quickly, and it was just I was in a really messed up mind state at the time. And when I looked at it, I was like, this isn't an Anthony of Egypt album. It doesn't make sense. I can't have that name because it doesn't relate at all to that experience and that reality. So at the time, I looked at it and I was like, I have to take the name Kalki. That's the only option I really have. And so I took the name Kalki, and it stuck, and so many people knew me by that by this point now, like 90% of my music on YouTube, on my albums, everything else is all under the name Kalki. But recently, I've been switching a lot, and I've been dropping a lot of albums under Anthony of Egypt, under Kikwaku, under Legion, under Professor X, under all kinds of different AKAs that I kind of diversified. So to me, I don't think, and I've never thought that I was like the one and only Kalki. Like, if anything, back in the days, I thought, one of these days, maybe, who knows, 1,000, 500,000 years from now, if I really worked towards it and I perfected my spiritual craft and my soul and everything, maybe I could get to the point where I could become one of, how many millions or trillions or countless avatars of Kalki, who's already an avatar of another divinity. And that divinity is actually an avatar of another evolution of a divinity in Jainism, which, becomes Sri Amam Swami. Sri Amam Swami is Krishna. So, and that divinity itself worships the supreme force, which is like, what we would call the creator, or like the, the ultimate sentient force of the universe. So in the end, it's like, when I've tried to explain that to people, in my best form, what I could ever hope to be would be like an avatar of an avatar of an avatar of a being that worships the supreme being. So people think it's like, oh, you're so full of yourself, you think you're God. And I'm like, no, man, I think I'm like, a being of a being of a being in my best shape that, that actually is like just a reflection, like one of a million or a trillion different reflections of a being that worships the supreme being. So in the end, I'm a lot less than a human being. It's just that, you take a name like that and people start thinking a bunch of shit about you, and then they start, assuming all kinds of things, whether it's positive or negative, and they either idealize you or they demonize you.
Yeah, no doubt. I know what that's all about as far as picking a name as well. I kind of had those things with my name, and people saying, if you've already found the truth, why are you still seeking for it? You know what I'm saying? And all this kind of stuff. But yeah, that whole thing about the spiritual MCs, man. And the reason I bring up, Son of Saturn and Atma, both of those dudes stole money from me on selling me verses. They were supposed to do collabs with me, had me send the money, and then, never came through or whatever, and basically told me fuck me or whatever when I asked them for the money.
Yo, that's fucked up, man.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I sent them like $150 or whatever, and yeah, so that's one thing that happened with that. And that was the thing, like, I really looked up to those guys, but it's crazy, man. It was another guy too, a guy named Decipher 73i.
Oh yeah.
Who I really looked up to.
He's affiliated with LCOB too, isn't he?
Yeah, I really looked up to him, and we actually had a track together, and I was gonna get him on the Voices album. My homeboy The Voice, I was producing that, and he paid him to get on the album, and then found out that we was affiliated with Christians, and we did Christian hip hop back in the day and all that, and they basically rubbed it in our face and said, you're not getting your money. Your money's being used to support our mosque, because supposedly they lived at a freaking Islamic commune or some crap, and was like rubbing it in our face that, us Christians were supporting Islam and trying to make us like get upset about it and stuff, and kept the money, and was like sending crazy messages back and forth. It's like, what the heck, man?
But you know what's crazy? The way I look at it, and I know it's fucked up for sure, and I'm not denying that, but the way I look at things nowadays, when something happens to me, when somebody steals money from me or somebody jacks me, like, that's happened to me in the past when I was in Guadeloupe, and I remember laughing, like the dude stuck a fucking screwdriver in my ribs, and he's like, yo, give me all your money right now. And I was like, I just smiled, and I looked at him. I was like, I got $5 in my pocket, man. You want to have that $5? You can have it. Like, you don't even need to put that screwdriver in there. Like, don't worry about it. Like, it's $5, man. Keep it. And he looked at me and he's like, no, and he pushed it harder. And I'm like, dude, it's all good, man. Don't worry about it. It's cool. Like, you don't need to look hard in front of your homies, man. You're good. Like, and he looked so weird after that. I was there to buy like a 5 chunk of weed. And he felt so strange after that when he took the $5, he actually gave me the 5 chunk after that. He's like, yo, I'm sorry, man. And he's like, yo, here, you can have this. And I was like, you know what? You can keep it. You look like you really need the money, man. Don't worry about it. Sell it to somebody else and get yourself an extra $5. Yeah. And that's how I look at it now. Is when like last summer, actually, I had 2 bikes that I bought. One of them, I built it myself as BMX. Like, I took it from scratch from this native girl that gave it to me at 3 a.m, and it was beat the fuck up. And I took it to a shop, got it fixed up, everything, like spray painted it myself, put some wormhole stickers on it, because me and Worm were like, back then he sent me this package, and I want to give him respect for that. And no matter what the bullshit is that's going on right now, I just want to say, like, I still love and respect the dude, man. I have nothing against him. I have nothing against any of these people that aren't actively promoting hatred towards some kind of, like, I've never seen Wormhole do anything like that. There's a lot of cats that I know that have never done shit like that. They just happen to be friends with people that are like that, and they feel like respecting them and ignoring the fact that they're doing that is the best course of action. I feel differently, but I respect it, whatever, But either way, so these bikes, I get these bikes, and I spend like a decent amount of money fixing up that BMX, and then I buy this mountain bike too that, I spend like $200 on or something. That's like really nice looking bike, and both of them get stolen within the span of a week. And I remember like smiling. I came there one day and I just see the empty, thing where my bike was, and I see the lock that's chopped off, and these guys looking at me and they're like, holy shit, your bike got stolen. You must be pissed. And I was like, nah, man, I'm actually pretty happy, because somebody probably really needed that bike really badly to snap it off a main street like that in the middle of Edmonton and risk getting busted just to steal a bike, So I hope that they get something good out of it, and they end up, doing whatever, driving around with it, having a good bike for the next 6 months or whatever, and, or selling it and making some money that they desperately need to pay rent or buy food or whatever it is. But either way, every time I look at something, and I know that Atma or Saturn or whatever, I'm sure, I don't know what their financial situation is, but obviously they're not homeless, or they might be at some point, but, most of the time they're doing okay. Like, I remember Saturn was living in a temple for a while. Atma, he's working some construction job, and, he looks like he's making a decent amount of money. So I know they don't need that money. But my hope when something like that happens is that those people actually do put it towards something that I believe is beneficial or not, or hopefully. And if they don't, what I think in my mind is that's okay, because karma is going to make you reuse that money in a proper way eventually. Exactly. You can't run away from that.
Exactly. Yeah, no doubt. It totally works like that, and I'm not sweating it. I won't do business with them in the future, but, all things work together to the goods of those who love God, man. You know what I'm saying? So everything that happens is planned and ordained, so nothing happens by chance. It's all good. It's all part of the journey. Mm-hmm. So, look, we're going to go ahead and go to a break. And on the other side of the break, maybe we can come back and get into some of that deep esoteric knowledge that people are wanting to hear. Kind of, change gears from all of the rap drama and rap beef that, you know what I'm saying, people wanting us to address anyway, and people wanting to know about this stuff. So,
Yeah, no, that's very true, and I'm glad that it's there, and it's good to put it out there in a non-hateful fashion, so people actually see it's not just like, a bunch of like, throwing out, well, this guy's a faggot, this guy's this and that, he's fucking weak, he's like, it's like, no, like, just state the facts, like, you can call people this and that all day long if you want, but at the end of the day, if you're just throwing names at people, like, that's not substance, that's not factual, that's just your opinion. So
that's what's up. So we're going into the break. On the other side of the break, we're going to take some questions that we got and shift gears a little bit. We'll be right back.
When you're in business, you need a professional website. When you visit webcreatorpros.com, you can have the website you've always wanted without spending thousands of dollars. For just $799, you can have a professionally designed website, a registered domain name, SEO optimization, 1-year hosting, and a website store. Use the promo code TRUTH and save $200. What an incredible deal. Everything you will ever need for your website at a price you can afford. Go to webcreatorpros.com.
There's a new book on the market that's turning the traditional religious circles upside down. The name of this book is Jesus, Yeshua, is a Worm and a Snake Too, among other things. Yes, you heard me correctly. Jesus, Yeshua, is a Worm and a Snake Too, among other things. The theme of this book is based upon a little-known ancient messianic prophecy in Psalm 22, where Jesus refers to himself as a worm. Whether you are religious or not, the information contained in this new book is life-changing at worst. One reviewer states, "Wow, what an interesting and engrossing book. I was fascinated with the writing from the word go. This has been the single best read on the various aspects of the Bible that lay people need help with to understand and appreciate. Listen, if you are interested in throwing away traditional thinking and learning the truth of biblical prophecy, get your copy of Jesus is a Worm and a Snake Too, among other things, from Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and many online bookstores. You can also visit the author page at www.kshoulderpfg.com.
All right, guys, we're back talking to Kalki, having this interview. We're addressing some issues and some of the little chinks that we get on the way, trying to work with people, trying to do things, trying to build. It's crazy, man. I don't even I just had somebody send me a message. It's like, man, I really love your music and I listen to your story and I want to learn more, all of these things, and they want me to send them some information, some books and some people they can read and follow and stuff like that. And I'm at the point where I don't even want to promote anything like that. I'm just like, look, you just need to spend time in intimacy and prayer and meditation and do that. You know what I'm saying? And whatever comes. And it's like, okay, well, I'm doing that. And then I just told him straight up, it's like, look, I don't even want to promote anybody. So I'm like, just go to the ancient text. I don't want to.
Yeah, and that's exactly.
Just go to the ancient text because there's so much there that you can go to, and it stood a lot longer than we have, and some of the other people have hidden agendas and motives. I can't 100% endorse someone without worrying about you falling into some of the other things that they promote or they can open up doors to. Especially when you're dealing with knowledge and understanding, it gets kind of weird when you're sensitive to some of the things that are going on out there,
No, I fully agree, and that's exactly why. I turned Revolt Motion recently. I've been changing a lot of stuff on there, and I've been adding up a lot of different links to all kinds. There's one that's called Holy Books, Esoteric Scriptures, I think. And basically all it is 2 or 3 different links to these different websites where you can go, and there's an entire, I think one of them is holybooks.com.
Yeah.
And there's thousands of different sacred scriptures. You can just alphabetically search for them. Yeah. You can find anything. And that's what I usually tell people. I'm like, go on there, go download a PDF, whatever you're thinking of. Go Google some stuff and think whatever religion or faith or spirituality, or author that you've heard of from someone that's interesting to you, and choose your own books and look through them. But I tell them, look at it critically. Don't look at it as a person that's oh, this is coming from the supreme source of ultimate wisdom that, nothing should be questioned. And I think that's the root of the problem between all religions, is everybody assumes that their own is supreme and there's nothing that we can question in it. But everything, like you do I'm doing a religious studies class right now and another comparative literature study where we're studying wisdom literature. And I'm actually thinking of doing my postdoctorate in actually comparative wisdom literature. And I just want to compare all the different traditions from all over the planet. But that's the thing. Most people that do that don't do it with a critical perspective. They look at it thinking, oh, well, this is unquestionable. You got to think this is, in many cases, this is a text that was written by a man that was living in a patriarchal society from, 3,000 years ago. Even if those, they were, which in many cases they are revelations from God or from the goddess or from whatever. Many of these are still within the context of the time, have been reinterpreted and have been, pushed in a certain way. So, and that's why I love alternative traditions so much. Gnosticism, Sufism, Zoroastrianism, Sikhism, all these different, Kabbalistic studies, Sephirotic studies, like Son of Saturn talks about. There's so many different, within those mainstream religions, there's so many different branches that are unknown, apocryphal, that, people don't study.
Yeah, I've kind of got my own thing, man, as well. I can't tell you, because people want to, identify you in a box. Okay, Truth Seeker, what are you? Okay, you're this because I want to be what you are. It's no, I'm a little bit of everything, man. It's whoa, you're just confused. You don't know what you believe. No, I know what I believe, but it's evolving. I haven't arrived, and I don't think any of us have. I can't say that I can agree with this doctrine and this belief system 100%. There's things in this belief system that I can vouch for 100%, and there's other things that I think is a bunch of BS, and I would never promote. Yeah. And so I can't tell you, like I said, as far as the books go read this book, because I know that you're going to probably read his next book that, it's dissing everything that I'm about or something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, there's all that kind of stuff going on. But it is what you're talking about, man. It's where it's at as far as the syncretism and finding the streams that tie all the religions together. And once you begin to transcend the dogma and move past that, my religion is the only religion that's right, and begin to, I don't know if it's study. You don't even have to study other religions, but just begin to look into them a little bit, and see everything that's the same, because it's going to, if you know your religion really good, like if you know your holy books and you just glance at the other ones, you're going to see a stream, man. You're going to see it. You don't even have to stretch.
Oh, definitely. And then just to throw into that about, because I was born a Christian, and I know you were probably born a Christian as well, from what I understand, right? So, even in Christianity, I was having this conversation with a bus driver the other day, and that's why I respect you so much, even regardless of whether you still are a Christian or but to me, even if you were, you're an open-minded one, in the sense that, they talk about the 12 tribes, right? Levi, Issachar, Gad, Judah, there's so many different ones, but to me, a lot of people are like, those are the lost tribes of Israel. And I've heard many different Christians telling me those are lost. We don't know where any of them are, and we don't have any of their scriptures. And I'm like, how does that make sense? How would it not make more sense that all of these 12 tribes would represent, and a lot of people say that there's approximately something like 12 major religions on the planet. Why wouldn't it make sense that each of those would represent a tribe, and that each of the books of these sacred scriptures is the stick of a different tribe? It's not just the stick of Judah. Like the Mormons believe that the stick of Ephraim is their own book. So maybe that's the case. Maybe it's not. I don't know. What is it? The 13 risen saviors as well, Yeah, exactly. No, and even the 13th, I've often talked about the 13th tribe as being the Egyptian Coptic Christians, or like the Kemetic Egyptians. Yeah. So there's so many, and there's way more. And I've talked in one of the tracks too, I think on Sands of Time, where I say there's many more oral traditions and writs unscripted that, we haven't discovered yet or that we've forgotten. Yeah. So it's definitely it's endless. Yeah, it's definitely there as far as the 12 disciples, the 12 tribes, the 12 houses of the zodiac, they all go together, man. They're all, it's all telling a story of allegory that is a story about us. It's about you, the 12 disciples. We all play those roles at times, and the 12 houses of the zodiac. When you do the deep study on it, you find out that each disciple represents one of the houses. And when you do the study even deeper, you find out that their personalities correlate with the sign that they were born under. As far as and I wouldn't even be surprised, because a lot of people have talked about the 13th sign to Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer, right? So then that, and again, that fits with the idea of the 13 is always that forgotten, cursed number that people are like, oh,
Judas.
That's bad luck, or it's like, but no, man, that's
Judas
like
would be 13,
tradition. Exactly, yeah. So there's all kinds of different, and man, to me, and 12 is a symbolic number in the Bible, right? Too, it's like when Jesus says forgive 77 times. He's not saying forgive them 77 times, and the 78th don't forgive them anymore. It's a number that means infinity, basically. Yeah. So, and 12 to me is a symbolic number too. When they say there's, 12 times 12 legions of, or 144,000 seraphims and cherubims and thrones and dominions, those are symbolic numbers. There might not actually be exactly 144,000. Maybe there are, but maybe there's 144,000 in this density, and then 144,000 in another density, and then endless manifestations of all these different,
Yeah, and so that same principle is with the 72 virgins in Islam. Whenever you break it down, it's not 72 virgins. That means the same thing. It means a lot. It's not like, okay, that's 72, that's it. Okay, that's your number. That 72 is this Arabic idiom. And then the same thing with the Hebrew idiom, as far as you had a day is like 1,000 years. The whole 1,000, that's the same thing. The word 1,000 in the Bible means a very large number. It doesn't mean 1,000. A day is like 1,000 years for the Lord. It's going to be 1,000-year reign, and then Satan is unleashed.
Even the 7 days of creation. Exactly. I remember talking about that in one of my tracks way back in the days, where I was like 7 days of creation is 7 days in Nibiru. Multiply that by 3,600. That's symbolic logic in Earth days. So, whatever it may be, maybe it's not 3,600, but either way, if you look at it from a different solar system, different planetary perspective, if it's not one revolution around the sun equals 1 day, maybe it equals, on a different planet that equals 3,600 human days or 3,600 years, or, So that's how I look at the creation story sometimes. It's like, again, it's like a metaphor for, if those beings weren't from this planet in the first place, then they wouldn't be counting in Earth days.
Exactly.
But touching on that subject of Islam, I'd like to delve into it because one of my friends from Ontario, Sundeep, actually asked me to mention, he said, what do you think about Islam? And he wanted me to talk about that. And since we kind of touched upon that idea earlier of like, Decipher saying, this and that about, old Christians supporting Islam.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting because like some of my best friends are Muslim. And I've seen some, just like in Christianity, just like some of my best friends are Christian too, and, from all over the place. And to me, the way I look at Islam, the same way as I look at Christianity in a sense, and many other religions, Buddhism or Hinduism or anything, is that, intrinsically, I believe that their value is very pure and deep. It's just that, mainstream manifestations of this and the people that represent them in many cases, especially in official, high hierarchical positions, they become very oppressive and misinterpreting, those scriptures, and then they start completely twisting it into something else. So I think that's the problem why people, there's all this demonization of Islam these days. And the same thing happens to Christianity. And people misunderstand the origins. But the way I look at Islam, the way it's supposed to be, and a lot of Muslims would probably, or some Muslims would probably disagree with me on this purpose because I've had this, conversation before with them. But I believe that, basically, I believe Islam is meant to be, or I don't know if you've heard about Bahaism. I think we've talked about it last time.
Definitely.
But I believe they're the messianic. I think I mentioned that last interview actually. But I think they're the messianic fulfillment of Islam because that's what they purport themselves to be. That's what they mentioned. So they believe their prophets are from the house of Muhammad, and they came to peace be upon them, and they came to actually change the reform in a certain sense these outdated principles about like a number of misinterpretations of Islamic texts, like the Sharia, like the Islamic law, or like different bodies, and these sectarian divisions between Sunni and Shia and Ishmaelites, or different branches and sects of Islam. So I believe that in the end, Islam is actually meant to be an ultimate religion of peace, which manifests like, an acceptance for all religions and all faiths on the planet. And I do believe that, friends of mine that I have, like my friend Ali, that we often call, like in Newton Academy, we call him Imam Ali because he was named after the Imam, the son-in-law of Muhammad, who, many believe is actually, supposed to be the leader of Islam after Muhammad's death. I believe that people like that are actually going to bring Islam into a new era, into a new phase, and are actually going to bring this unifying of Christianity, of Islam, of Hinduism, of like many different religions across the planet. And instead of arguing and warring over, who has the ultimate authority, they're going to try to say, listen, like you said earlier, we're all trying to say something, similar in a different way, and we need to accept these things. People have been talking about it for a long time, but I think what's lacking is that not enough people have been able to explain, I don't know, or maybe there hasn't been just enough attention, but like I think there hasn't been enough specific explanations of the studying of the similarities and the differences and how they occurred, how these, linguistic and etymological schisms happened. And that's something that I'm really interested in as well. And I've been studying that for a while. So I'm hoping that, in some of my studies, at least in my PhD and in my postdoctorate after that, I'm hoping that I can, shed some light on some of these matters.
Yeah, the more that, you do the studying and you see what's going on, a lot of times you try to say, well, they did this, so, they're the bad guys, right? And then you just look in, you're like, well, there's Christians that do those things too. Or there's Christian texts that tell you that, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. If there's any witches in the land, let's kill all the witches. You know what I'm saying? And it talks about the infidels in the Christian Bible. We are to take over those who don't follow Yahweh, and we need to take over their encampments and kill all their women and kill all their children and not let anyone live. So there are those things in the Holy Bible as well. It's not really practiced in Christianity because they don't really view the Old Testament like that. They say, well, that's the Old Testament. That's like how, Yahweh used to be. He's not like that anymore. But those, those scriptures are in there, right?
No, exactly. And a lot of people actually, I hate how people like often say, oh, you misinterpreted that. And it's like, no, it's not a misinterpretation. It's just that back then people were really freaking ignorant and like, you know, like narrow-minded about all kinds of different topics, including racism and like sexism and like homophobia. And so you can't take it in the same context, but you can't just say, no, people misinterpreted that. That's not what it meant. No, that's what it meant. It's just it shouldn't be actual anymore.
Yeah. So I was like, actually, before we did this interview, I seen a video on Facebook, and it was something that was recently in the news, like this week. This Islamic lady, I think she was a babysitter. She was watching this toddler and cut the baby's head off, and she was walking down the street holding the baby's head, and she's in Islamic garbs or whatever. She's holding the baby's head up and saying that she's got a bomb, she's going to kill herself and blow herself up, and she's holding the toddler's head up while she's walking through town. This is in America, and the cops end up, you know, tackling her and all this and get her or whatever, subdue her. And I'm like, man, that's crazy that, you know what I'm saying, they're at it again. They're doing all these extreme things or whatever. But then you got to stop and slap yourself like, hold up, wait. Christian people do the same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the difference is nobody will ever say, oh, a Christian person. Nobody, like, I'm pretty sure, you know, who knows? If you looked into the Unabomber, he was probably Christian.
Oh, he was.
You know what I mean? But nobody is like, oh, a Christian person just bombed this place. A Christian person did. No, they're just like, oh, they name the person. They say, you know, they won't say. And if it's somebody that's Muslim or that's, you know, or that's say is like brown or black or Latino, they're going to be a Latino. This person, you know, a Latino Muslim or, you know, a Middle Eastern Muslim did this thing. If it's a white Christian, they're not going to say a white Christian did this. They're just going to name the name, and they're going to say this person did this. They were completely crazy. They're never associated with anything. So that I'm glad you mentioned that, man.
Yeah,
that's really important.
And the KKK are Christians. They're a Christian sect.
Yeah, exactly.
They are a Christian sect. I spoke of it before, but I used to work as a helper electrician, and my bosses on the job were all card-carrying Klansmen from Mississippi. And they would pull their cards out and show us, and they would tell racist jokes all day and say how they hate black people, and I would be going against them, like, nah, man, you know what I'm saying? They were like, yeah, man, every time you hear, you know, there was a raping on the news, you know it's a black person, you know it was a color. You know, they were using another word, but, you know what I'm saying? They were saying that, and I was like, and so I'm just trying to take up, because I have a lot of black friends. I'm like, you know, anytime you hear about a child molestation, it's always a white person, you know? And so, you know what I'm saying? Just trying to give them a taste of their own medicine or whatever. And that's just what I try to show people, like the same manner of which you're judging somebody, you're going to be judged by that same manner. So a lot of times we're saying something and doing something and judging people that are doing the same things that we're doing. But, oh, how disgusting and nasty our sin looks when someone else is committing it, you know? And we feel like we're exempt or something like that. And love conquers all, man. If your religion doesn't teach love and it's not founded on pure universal love, I don't want to hear nothing you got to say. But if you're walking in love towards all men and you have a religion, you have a practice, you have something that keeps you connected to that source, I'm all for it. You know, but we can tell by your fruits.
Definitely, and towards all humans, towards all beings, really, man. Like towards all
lack of religion,
beings, man.
Exactly. Or lack of religion. An atheist who is walking in love towards all creation and all people. Yeah,
I have a track about that. Actually, on my upcoming album with Six Fire, the late Six Fire from Edmonton, who actually passed away of an overdose this summer, like a good friend of mine. And I'm you know, he gave me a bunch of beats before he passed away. And his brother is Aspect is actually a really cool dude from who's one of the main producers from Mad Child, from Swollen Members too, and I've been building with him recently, just talking to him and shit, and like we talked about, you know, building on some stuff. But this track, I have a track with Six Fire that's called What's Your Religion? Have Faith. And in there, basically, is exactly what I'm saying. Is like I mentioned, you know, there's like 4 different parts where I'm like, you know, if I was a Christian, I'd be this. If I was a Muslim, I'd be this. And I talk about all the different, like, forgotten sects and divisions of, you know, whether Gnosticism, Apocrypha, you know, everything that I was mentioning earlier, like, you know, if I I mentioned if I was a Muslim, I'd be a Baha'i or a Sufi, trust this. So, you know, and all these different things. And at the end, I'm like, but there's so many other religions or faiths that I could name as an infinity, but basically everyone, but they're all basically the same, essentially, if you make exception of the mistranslations and sayings. So So, and that's what I'm trying to tell people a lot too. It's just like, stop looking at those little differences. Baha'is have a saying where they say, don't look at the one defect in a person, look at the 10 qualities instead. Mm-hmm. And that's what people should be doing with religions and with faith. And, they should stop nitpicking at each other, because in the end, you can do a lot of people are like, oh, Buddhism, Hinduism, this and that. There's nothing, or not a lot, but like, especially people, I see that with Buddhism, they idealize the shit out of it. And they're like, yo, this is the perfect religion. It's the best one out of all of them. And I'm like, no, man, Buddhism is very misogynistic too, man. Like how many women lamas, women rinpoches do you see? There's a couple like rinpoches. There's a couple like important women that are still lower caste, but there's never a Dalai Lama that's a woman. I wrote a track about that recently where I was like, man, I hope one day there's going to be like a gay Dalai Lama. I hope one day there's going to be like a woman Dalai Lama. I hope one day that, but who knows how long that's going to take,
Yeah. Yeah, I know that was like one of the first things that kind of woke me up to like universal love. It was, I put it in my song when I was doing gospel music, man. But I said, let us witness like the Jehovah's. Let us pray just like the Jews. Let us fast just like the Muslims. I'm a fool, but only for you. We can dance like charismatics. Get in the Bible like we're from First Baptist. Judge it with the word just like Judge Mathis. Teach it in the street like the Hebrews on the Sabbath. You know what I'm saying? So it's like all of these different sects, man, they have these qualities about them that I love and that they believe in, and that they, in some cases would die for, So I think everybody has a piece of the truth, or everybody has a piece of the puzzle. And, as far as the dogma is concerned and just, warring one with another, I mean, these religions are, busy warring within themselves, man. So that should show you that they haven't reached elevation of consciousness yet. If they're still fighting each other, come on. So we just got to rise above that. I want to take a couple questions, man. We got a couple people who sent questions in.
I just want to address that one last part of Sundi before that too. Well, do you want me to do that first, or
go ahead.
Do it later too?
You got it. Go ahead.
Okay, so but since it's on that subject, we were just talking about like the unifying of religions. You wanted me to talk about Anu and Enki and Enlil, but I wanted to link that to explain to people how these different religions can all link up together. So basically, I wanted to compare the Sumerian Trinity in Sumerian Genesis with the Hindu Trimurti, which is the same thing as the Trinity, and compare that to and bring in elements of Islam as well within that. So you have like this idea of Anu and Enki and Enlil. Anu, who's the father, Enki, who's the half-breed illegitimate offspring, who many say is like the Christ prototype. Anu is like Yahweh. And then because Enki is the one who, saves humanity from the flood, whispers to Ziusudra, creates helps him build the ark, and then saves humanity. And Enlil is the one who, in the Bible, that's why there's the multiple voices, when it says, he must not become like one of us. It's because in the original text that were translated from, Sumerian and then to Babylonian and Hittite and Canaanite and whatever until they became into, in Hebrew or later in Greek or like, in Aramaic, it's because, that was a plural, because in the original text, it was Anu and Enki and Enlil that were talking, and that was the trinity of Sumerians. That was like the godhead of Sumerians. And Enlil was like the one who was the warrior, he was the legitimate son of Anu. So he was like the successor to Anu, and he was the one who was going to take over the throne of Yahweh as, like watching over the planet, basically. But Enki was the one who cared more about humankind, but he got demonized by his father because he wasn't legitimate and because he was going against their instructions to, that's just a myth, but I'm just, stating the myth, basically, and explaining the origins and context of it. But there's many people that have studied that, and I've looked into it as well, and many people have equated Enlil with Allah, and have equated Anu with Yahweh, and Enki not directly with Christ, but with a prototype. Like in each of these things, that's where, they say that the sources were inspired from to, modify these texts. And it's not hard for me to believe that these beings could have been an earlier evolution of that, and eventually part of their consciousness might have wafted into a different person that reincarnated later, But then if you look into Hinduism, you have the Trimurti, which is the Trinity as well, the Godhead, which is Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu, or Brahma, Shiva, and Krishna. And Brahma is the creator, who's associated with Yahweh again. And then you have Vishnu or Krishna, which is like the Christ prototype. And many people have associated Krishna with Christ and tried to link that together. So that makes a lot of sense, because he's the one who actually has, the most compassion for humankind as well. And Shiva, who's, you can associate easily Shiva with Enlil or with Allah again, because Shiva is, the creator and destroyer. He's the one who holds the power, who's the warrior, and who wields, the most fierce weapon, and who's, kin to the fiercest divinity, who's, his consort is Kali. So he's very, potent, powerful warrior, but many people misinterpret that and misunderstand that, and many people that I know have demonized Shiva without even understanding what the origins of the energies are. So the same way that Christians, demonize Allah in some cases, or that some Muslims demonize Yahweh, or that other beings, like, then both of them sometimes demonize Hindus and say Shiva is this, Shiva is that. But in the end, those are all like the same. You have those direct links, like etymologically and historically, they actually, and mythologically, they fit together. So I wanted to address that because of Sundeep and what he had asked me to. So that's it. So we can jump into other questions if you want now.
Yeah. All right. This first question is from Bianca Brayboy.
Oh, nice.
And she said,
that's one of my best friends, man. I've been talking with her for years.
Yeah, definitely. Well, she wanted to make sure she got a question in, so.
Hey, Kalki. It's Bianca Brayboy. I was just wondering, how would you tap into other realms of consciousness while still remaining in this realm, if possible?
That's a really good question, and that's something that I have to deal with on a daily basis, actually. So thank you for asking that. Honestly, I think the essence and the key in that situation is actually learning to be an efficient and a good multitasker. So the way I look at it, I mean, I can't even count the number of times where I was driving down the highway and I'm having a conversation with beings from a different density while I'm driving. But the thing is that whole time while that happens, I'm still staring at the road very intensely and trying to bring myself back into focus and staring. You can't basically, when you're tapping into those different densities, if you're in a safe space, like if you're in your bed, then you can completely disembody sometimes. And, there's no threat. There's nothing to worry about. You're in your bed, you're in your room, the door's locked, everything is good. You're safe. Then you can disembody and you can go into those different realms and you can astral travel. You can do whatever you want, whether you're doing that, by smoking marijuana or just by meditating or by taking mushrooms or whatever it is that you do, some sacred legal substance like some entheogenic, Syrian rue or whatever it may be. But when you're actually functioning within a context, you need to, I think the most important part to remember is like trying to balance the risk which is associated with tapping into those different densities and partially disembodying yourself with, your reaction. I do that a lot in classes. I was doing that today when I went to this ethics workshop that I had to go to that was really boring to me, but I was like, whatever. And what was really cool is the lady actually brought up MK Ultra and like some other shit in there, and I was like, that's dope. And so I focused when she said that, and I made a comment. But the rest of the time I was writing a verse and I was kind of thinking about different things in my mind, and I wasn't really there. And it was okay because like I'm sitting in a chair and, people don't really expect you to pay that much attention to that. It's just a mandatory class that you have to sit in for an hour. So I do that in classes all day long sometimes, and I don't even focus halfway on what's going on. You need to remember that depending on how much attention is required from other people interacting around you, you want to make sure that you don't make them seem like they're being neglected, or that you can, kind of balance what you think is a priority in your mind in reaching these other realms, which are probably much more tangible and useful to you in many ways than that reality that we often think is dreary and boring. But, I would say that the key factor in there is safety and respect for other people. So safety for yourself, because disembodying is a serious thing, and respect for other people as well. So looking, making sure that you're being respectful of the people around you if you're not paying attention to something that's going on. But in the end, I think doing that, one of the main ways and one of the safest ways to attain any of these states is meditation and discipline. I'm not a very disciplined, person myself, and I've used many substances to reach these states, and it's possible. The thing is, it always comes with a price. And, the more potent the substance is and the more dangerous it is, the more side effects, the more you're actually paying a steep price for that substance. So just remember that patience and perseverance and practice and discipline are actually a lot better than, intense amounts of knowledge and wisdom in very short doses of time, because those carry a toll on your mind and on your body.
This next question is from Philo, the Bodhisattva.
Yeah, Blue. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, no, I know who that is. Okay. Dope.
Yeah, he has a 2-part question, so I'll go ahead and go with the first part.
Righteousness. All right, yeah, I just wanted to check and see, when is the next collaboration between y'all two? Y'all two are really the only rappers I tune into.
Yo, man, respect. Anytime. You want to start that tomorrow, I'm down. I got my studio at home, man. I'm like, and I was going to actually ask you today, man. That's one of the things I wanted to ask you, is if you wanted to officially join Sadhu Militia and drop something for the next album that's coming out, man. We're starting to build that right now, actually. So if you wanted to drop a verse on one of the upcoming albums, man, I'm totally cool with that.
Okay.
I don't know if you're a bit, familiar with that, but it's basically touching upon all the things that we were already talking about, this unification of different religions. Even if it comes from a term that, is from India, the idea of a sadhu is basically someone that doesn't adhere to any, mainstream religious doctrines in India, but, is a homeless person that goes around with very little possessions and just meditates on the true nature of God and seeing the divine within nature and everything around them. So there's sadhus, there's sants, there's agoris, there's different, but they're not a part of the caste system. They're a lot like the untouchables in a sense. Like they don't belong to any caste. So that's where the idea of Sadhu Militia was born for. And then the idea of militia is like a militant organization of people that banded together, not in a militant, like military sense, but in a militant sense in fighting oppression.
Yeah, we definitely can make that happen, man. And I'm actually helping Watchman with his album right now, producing it. So we may be able to get you on a track on that I'm featured on as well. So, cause I'm not working on,
I'm down,
what I'm saying, any of my solo stuff. So, but I am doing some
honestly,
features with him.
Link me up anytime.
Yeah.
And I can get that done probably within like less than a week.
Wow. Okay. Definitely, man. And we're working on that now. So there you have it. Be looking for those releases. The new Sadhu Militia project that's coming out, and Watchman's album, which will be out probably about a year or so.
Yeah.
It's still going to be a minute.
Yeah, Volume 2, Sadhu Militia is coming out. Volume 1 already came out. If people, those that didn't know, you can look that up. Anahata Sacred Sound Current, his Bandcamp. Go look for Sadhu Militia Volume 1. Just Google Sadhu Militia Volume 1 or Anahata Sacred Sound Current in Bandcamp, and it's on there. It's got an amazing amount of people, like in probably 15 different languages from 30 different countries. It's one of the biggest collectives. Part of LCOB, actually, a Cosmic Crusader and Lex Starwind are most likely going to be on Volume 2 and Volume 3. Amos the Ancient Prophet is going to be producing 2 tracks off of Volume 2. One of them is going to be me and Unknown Misery, and Synchro Shakti from India, too, who's an amazing goddess. Check out her YouTube channel. And check out Vimana's project from back in the days, actually, too, which was kind of like the inspiration for Sadhu Militia.
Yeah, that was good.
My second question is, when did Kalki start elevating his mind, specifically, coming out of the world and getting into esoteric knowledge, and as well as truth seeking? Peace.
Yo, you wanna get into that first? You want to talk about yours, maybe?
Yeah, well,
okay.
I mean, mine just in stages, man, just having experiences as a kid, having some type of otherworldly encounters with beings in my bedroom. And I think for the most part, it seemed of the demonic sort, started piquing my wonder that something else was going on. Something was there on the other side of this reality. So that just started piquing my interest as a kid. I was like, probably 3 years old when these things started happening. And so me just getting into some witchcraft and things like that. I got into church for a while and then didn't find no power there. Then got into witchcraft and got into Satanism and Wicca and all kind of stuff like that, just trying to make contact with this other side. And me, I got to a place where I was communicating with spirits and things like that, and it was some really crazy stuff I was doing as a teenager, and almost lost my mind in that. So I called out to God, found a place of solace in the church, and did that in 2000, and it just started getting deeper for me. Just did the whole Christian experience thing for 8 years or so, and then just the experiences started going deeper and deeper, fasting and praying, and the heavens being opened up and shown signs and wonders and all of these things that took it a lot deeper, that transcended the Christian religion, where they didn't want to deal with. Even though these things like we're talking about are mentioned of in the Bible, they didn't want to deal with those type of things. So I found myself in this weird place, still being a Christian, still having faith in Christ, but not really. I can't talk to the other Christians. I can't talk to the pastors. You know, they haven't seen. They haven't seen these UFOs and angels traveling back and forth from heaven to earth, and all these deep encounters and things. And the Lord began to show me this stuff in the Bible. So I had scriptures to back everything up. But, it just kind of is too deep, man. So I just kind of took all the Christianese off of a lot of it. Everything I believe is still in the Bible. I could back it up, verse line upon line, precept upon precept, and break it down and use Christianese if I needed to. I just don't.
That's one of the reasons I think why they took out a lot of, why all the apocryphas are still apocryphal, why nobody knows about most of them, because a lot of the people that were running the church at the time that weren't even Christians, a lot of the Council of Nicke and like some of the different Roman emperors as well that tried to do changes to Christianity that didn't even believe in Christianity. Yeah. And they were thinking, well, there's way too much, esoteric knowledge in there. We can't give people access to that. They're going to end up knowing as much as we do. And they're going to end up knowing a lot of stuff that we don't want them to know. So let's just stick to these very safe, scriptures that we can conglomerate into an official Bible, and then we're going to hide all this other knowledge from them.
Yeah.
And we're going to tell them that it's,
it means something else,
bus driver the other day was telling me that was demonic. He's like, oh, the Gnostics, the Apocryphas, that's all demonic. You can't read that. And I was like, oh, what about Judith and Esther? And he's like, oh, those demonic. I'm like, yeah, of course. They're the only two women you can think of and that wrote scriptures in Christianity. And of course, they've got to be demonic, right? Like, that's so fucked up. But I can totally relate to that because I was born a Christian. I took the name Anthony of Egypt because, he exemplifies the Christianity that I believe in. And I believe in Christ, too. Christ is a very important force to me. Christ is my savior, in many ways. But so is Krishna, so is Buddha, so are, many, many different beings. Mm-hmm. So, and that's the part, again, like you, and that's why I don't really go to Christian churches much anymore because, I don't see them agreeing with that or identifying with that aspect. But it's funny because you telling me that story actually makes me think a lot about my own. To answer Blue's question, actually, that makes me think a lot about my own. The difference is, as a kid, I don't remember that much having those kind of spiritual experiences. I had some strange experiences, but most of them to me were more being isolated and ostracized by my peers. Because I was no joke, man. I was the biggest reject in every school. In pre-kindergarten and kindergarten, the kids on the playground called me monster, and I chased them around, and nobody wanted to touch me. Nobody wanted to see me. I had a girlfriend for a little bit when I was 5, and she meant everything to me. But, that was she was the only one that stood up against any of those kids and any of those people. She was my only friend. And, I had a couple of other friends here and there, but in the end, they never, it's fucked up what kids will do when, a bunch of kids start picking on you and they'll just back up and suddenly they don't even know you anymore, and they're just oh, but, you're kind of getting picked on right now. I'm just going to pretend nothing is happening. And, so a lot of that to me was kind of, if you can relate it to a different kind of demonic experience, I guess on a plane where, the beings around you become personified demons and they, they're actively, taunting you and ostracizing you and isolating you. And the teachers did that to me too. Even I remember actually, I went to this nun school when my mom wanted to send me to the best school she possibly could, which is funny because my mom's Métis, and she sent me to a Christian school, a Catholic nun school that was actually really oppressive towards First Nations, but she didn't even think about that. And at that time, I didn't even know that I had Métis bloodline. So, I didn't know I was Roma. I didn't know my father was a gypsy. So, I knew none of that shit. And people made fun of my name. They made fun of the way I looked, my big lips, my big ears, the weird food that ethnic food that my mom gave me to go eat, dates and plain yogurt and stuff like that. And it was funny because, the nuns there actually called me because I wrote backwards with my left hand, and they called me the child of the devil. And now when I think back, I'm you know what, I probably was to you. That's what I looked like, because a lot of what I was trying to bring about was actually scary and foreign and was devilish to you because that's how you thought of it. But later on, I remember having being oppressed so much, and this is kind of how I got into spirituality in the long run. Is I got oppressed by so many people and hated by so many people that I swore to myself that one of these days I would become the biggest criminal, the biggest thug, the biggest whatever you could think of when you're a kid. That you're I'm going to become this big scary dude that's going to scare the shit out of all of you, and you're all going to regret picking on me. And, you know, that was my mission for like the next 10 years of my life. And, you know, right up until actually probably 15 years. So right up until I was like in my early 20s, you know, this was this like rise to, you know, trying to become a prominent criminal. And so, you know, I started, when I was a young teenager, about the age of 12, I started selling marijuana, and I started, you know, roaming around with a bunch of street kids, carrying knives and like, you know, jacking people, doing all kinds of stupid shit, and rapping. And, you know, and rap back then to me in French, it was like a social conscience thing where I was criticizing the system, and I was doing, because that was my first language. But in English, I had all these influences from like, you know, I think some of the first albums I heard were like Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre's The Chronic. And I also heard Jeru the Damager, like The Wrath of the Mass. And that was like half, so that part kind of kept me like half conscious in my rhymes, and some Downset and Rage Against the Machine back then too, which kind of were like, so like even though I was like kind of caught up in the gangster, and then later on Nas and CNN and Mobb Deep and Tupac, and like, so even though I had these influences of gangsterism, I still had a bit of social conscience and revolutionary militance inside. And eventually that blossomed more and more, because I looked, and the more I progressed in the criminal underworld, and, you know, like, you know, on a local level, obviously, like, it's not like I was ever some huge drug lord or anything like that. But, you know, I became more respected, more people would look up to me. I started moving more weight. And, you know, cats in the city, you know, I started selling to other people that were selling, and, you know, started distributing and doing different things. And eventually I got arrested. And I, you know, at first I was like 15. I didn't get into that much shit. You know, I went to juvie, and like, it was cool. And I was like, okay, you know, I met some rappers there, and I was like, it was nothing. Like, that was a breeze. And I was like, okay, that's cool. I can keep doing this. I can deal with this kind of repercussion. So I did it again and again. And then I got busted again when I was just past 18. And then I was tried as an adult, and they tried to give me, you know, I was lucky. I got that time I got busted with like, I think like less than an ounce. So it was nothing. So then but they were still trying to give me 3 to 9 months in the correctional. And I was like, fuck, that's some bullshit. But then, you know, my lawyer was pretty decent, and, you know, managed to argue that I was mentally ill, and, you know, I wasn't really responsible, and I was a good kid, and this and that, because my mom was a university professor. And, you know, so he tried to kind of push this idea that I lost my father, and, you know, I was abused when I was a kid. And so they ended up giving me 6 months of house arrest. And I was like, oh, this is nothing, man. I can still deal with this shit. So I kept doing what I was doing, and I just, you know, and then one day, I got, when I was about 21, I think, something like that, you know, a friend of mine came to see me and asked me for some, and that was kind of like my wake-up call to spirituality. Like, that was really like the last call to me where I was like, yo, I need to shift. And back then I was still like, I did, when I was like 18, 19, I did Sumerian Genesis, and I did a couple of other tracks, and I was like working on this Conscious Revolution album. So I was starting to think in terms of like, you know, revolutionary mindsets, and really getting away from this whole gangsterism. But I was still so kind of enticed and like, you know, impressed by this gangster lifestyle that I was like, yo, I want to be like Wu-Tang. I want to be like, you know, Cocoa Brothers, like Boot Camp Clique. I want to be that cool dude that's like, I'm a gangster, but I'm still conscious, and I'm still, you know, I'm moving weight, but like, I'm doing it responsibly. I'm donating the money to charity, or like, so I started doing that. And then one day, this friend of mine asked me for a favor, and he told me he needed money to get back to Pakistan, where you know, his family was, and he needed to pay his uncle for like staying there, and he needed to give gifts to his family. And he was like, yo, he's like, you're kind of a gangster, right? He's like, yo, you got a knife or a gun or something, and he's like, you've robbed places before, right? You've robbed people. He's like, I know this dude that works at a corner store, man. He's like, easy job, man. We can just go there, you know, walk in, put some masks on, and, you know, we rob the place, like 5 minutes, we get out of there, and, you know, we each have like, you know, $500-600 or something, whatever they have in there, and then we can split it. I can get some money, you can get whatever you want. And I was like, yeah, sure, fuck, what could go wrong, right? And, you know, time safe, we couldn't get it open. Cops come 5 minutes later, we're surrounded, they got guns out. We almost got shot because I didn't even understand what they were saying, and I was running towards them with a knife, not even knowing what was going on. You know, thank God it was Canada, because in the States, guaranteed my ass would have been shot by then, and I'd probably be dead right now telling the story to some different, like, beings in another density or something. But you know, and then I got arrested, and then this time, so the same lawyer comes back, and he's like, you know, at first I get to talk to a legal aid, and because that's my one phone call, and he's like, oh shit, he's like, what, you got 2 priors, and like, he's like, you're getting arrested for an armed robbery right now, and he's like, holy fuck, you're screwed, I can't do shit for you. And I was like, fuck, I remember like I hung up that phone and I started crying. I was like, what the fuck did I do to my life, man? Like, how did I get to this point? And he was telling me I was looking at like 3 to 9 years in jail, which is exactly what the prosecutor tried to ask. And 3 to 9 years, like upstate at the pen, like not some fucking correctional shit. Like,
yeah.
And I was like, yo, like, fuck. And I remember praying in my mind and thinking like, yo, God, if you can get me out of this, man, honestly. Like, I was like, I talked to my mom after that. I got another phone call. I talked to my mom and I told her I was so sorry. And I told her what had happened. And I was like, Mom, I'm so sorry. I failed you. I fucked up. Like, please, like, I just want you to know I love you. And I, like, if I can ever make it out of this, I won't do this to you again. I promise. Like, I know that I've, you know, put you through all this bullshit through my life. And like, and my mom was really understanding, and she actually got me back, you know, she got me the original lawyer that I had for my first court case, who charged practically nothing, actually, for that. He was amazing. He spent hundreds of hours. And again, he argued my case so well, and I was at university at the time, so that was one of my saving graces. I was doing my BA, and I was doing it, like, part-time, and it took me, like, 10 years to finish it. So, like, it wasn't serious shit or anything, but it kind of helped me out of, like, that stereotype of being this person that was just, like, this criminal destroying society. So he tried to push this idea again that, you know, I was not really responsible for my actions, but also that I was working towards becoming a better person. I was going to be a citizen, get a diploma, and, you know, get a constructive job and become a member of society, and that I had just made a mistake and basically didn't know what was going on. So, you know, and the prosecutors were so fucked up in the way they organized themselves that they completely screwed up their defense against me. They, you know, they didn't manage to, they hadn't even read the files properly. So I ended up getting, again, which is really ridiculous, but instead of 3 to 9 years in jail, I ended up getting 6 months of house arrest and 18 months of probation with a conditional sentence and, like, restrictions on weapons and this and that. But in the end, it was like a slap on the wrist, and I was like, fuck. So I ended up spending, like, 2 weeks in the correctional waiting for my final court case. And then I met some cats in there that I still, you know, like, have a lot of respect for to this day. They kind of taught me a lot of shit. But that was my wake-up call. That was the point where I was like, yo, fuck this. Like, I cannot do this anymore. Like, I cannot be that person. There's no way that I'm doing this kind of bullshit again. Like, I'm done with being a gangster. I'm done with trying to act hard and trying to prove to the whole world. Like, this is just going to land me in a place where I'm never going to, you know, have any kind of chance of being the person I want to be. And after that is when I started actually having a lot of fucking, like, all kinds of visions and, like, different, like, epiphanies and realizations, some of which were very, like, deep and dark, and others that were actually very angelic. And, you know, just, yeah, like, I ended up, several years after that, like, I ended up having, like, these different psychotic episodes, I guess that some Western doctors would call it, where I was, like, in different realms, talking to demons, talking to other densities and beings, and I wrote a lot of that Dark Ages album based on that. The track Dreams in Dark Ages is actually, a lot of that is based on daydreams that weren't even dreams. Like, I was perfectly awake when I, you know, had that, and when I had that meditation. But, you know, I saw all of these different things, and that was really, like, my reconnection into, I would say, like, what some people have termed to be, like, super conscious spiritual hip hop. That was my awareness, like Bianca was asking in the previous question about, you know, managing this reality, or these different realities coexisting and living in all of them at the same time. That's what made me realize that basically you could be a multidimensional being that's multitasking in different densities and still be physically present and productive at what you're doing. And that's what brought me to who I am today. It's a long-ass statement, but yeah, that's sorry about that.
That's your story, man. Hey, if they want to hear it, they can refer back to this interview. That's it, man. That's a powerful story, man. Everybody's got their own story, and even, like, we're talking about relating all things back. I just listened to your story and just relate it back to mine, and, you know, vice versa, like you were saying. And
yeah.
And so that's what I respect from people. Like, I understand why people believe what they believe, because it's something they've been taught, or something from an experience that they had, or something that was passed down. And I don't hold it against that person, right? I don't get mad because somebody believes something different than me, or whatever, you know what I'm saying? But I just look at it with compassion and, you know what I'm saying, understanding. And not that anybody's wrong or I'm right. I'm not saying that I'm right. I mess with people. You know, I was like, dude, I don't know everything. Like, it's weird whenever you admit that stuff, because with, like, trying to build followers and trying to build a cult following or whatever, you have to know everything.
Yeah, no,
you can't
exactly.
admit that you don't know. And once you admit that you don't know, they're usually going to try to find that person that does know. Okay, well, this guy, he knows, though. But you know what? You know, this other guy, he knows. And he knows other stuff, too. And so, you know what I'm saying? So, therefore, you got a disciple. But we understand that, you know, that's not how spirit works, man. That's not how spirit works. The spirit uses everybody, teaches through everyone. So.
Yeah, no, exactly.
But yeah, so it takes a lot of humility to say that you don't know, or you're not trying to, you know, gain a reputation or something like that. You know what I'm saying? You just let the information, let the spirits use you, let source, God use you, you know, for whatever task it may be. And I think if you're faithful with the small things, you'll be able to, you know, be used for greater things as well. I believe that.
Yeah, and that's how I see it. That's one thing I want to reiterate to the people so that they know that is that that's exactly how I think about these things. It's like when people are like, yo, how'd you write that? And I'm like, I didn't write that, man. Those ideas were there a long, long time before I ever put them together. Like, I'm sure, guarantee you there's somebody up there, and there's a number of different beings up there that get way more credit than I should for any of the poems that I've ever written. And probably a number of beings down there as well, and in between, and in every different realm you could think of. Like, I didn't create these things. I'm kind of like, it's kind of like pulling out a puzzle from, like, you know, like a package and something, and you're the one that puts the puzzle together, but you didn't create that image, you didn't create that puzzle, you didn't do anything, you just put the pieces together, and you know, pieced them up in a way that created this scenery that's really attractive to many people, but you didn't actually paint that. You know, and even if you did paint that, that's not actually, like, it still comes from another source as an inspiration. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because I want people to know, even many times when people send me beats, you know, and I'm like, yo, the beat actually wrote that. The beat maker is the one who should get credit for that, because when I played that beat, those are the words that popped up in my mind. It's not like I sat there for 4 hours, tried to piece words together, and I was like, what would work well? No, literally, it just flows out. Yeah. So, and that's the only reason I could do that many albums. Like, I've got like 60 albums so far. I'm working on like another 40 right now. There's no way I could do that many albums if I was just trying to piece words together. Like, it has to flow out. Otherwise, how would it work?
You know what? It's different for me because I kind of do a mixture of both of them. Like a lot of times I'll get like a phrase like that, like a phrase or like a bar or two, right? Just something really neat, a rhyming scheme, or just some deep words, you know what I'm saying, that's been like downloaded to me. And then I'll just have to take it and build off of it. And
I've done that before too, for sure.
But it's hard because I've set the bar personally for me, my personal bar. I've set it so high with each song and trying to make each song better that I'll literally take a phrase and rhyme it 50 times until I find something that sounds deep and something that makes sense and something that rhymes the same way. You know, and
I've done that before too, for sure. But I've found ways where, I guess it really depends on the times in my life. Like, there's albums that I wrote literally within like less than a day, and there's other albums that took me like probably like a few years to piece together. You know? Yeah. So, but recently I'd say like there's been a lot more. There's been something of like an opening of different channels, which like, you know, some people have been, you know, I know some MCs like, you know, don't want to bring up names again, but we talked about him earlier, and he got mad at me one day, and he was like, yo, man, you fucking bullshit. You just write a bunch of bullshit. You write way too much, man. When I do my shit, I perfect it. I take all the time in the world, and like, you know, and I'm working hard, and it's going to be the dopest rhyme ever. And I'm like, I'm aware that I'm not the greatest lyricist. Like, I'm you know, I think I'm a good poet, but like, I think the main aspect that I have that's like beneficial to people, or like that's beneficial to me as a poet, is the fact that I'm that productive. Like, I think that's the, you know, the main thing that I have, and maybe the mathematical sequence in the rhymes. But I'm fully aware that my rhymes are like, you know, they're okay, but like, you know, there's definitely people that have better rhyme schemes. There's people that have more poetic insights or like more interesting things. It's just that, you know, I'm good at creating a large body of work, I suppose, and that's probably one of the only things that I could really, you know, give myself credit for.
No, that speaks a lot if you've got that much work, man, definitely. And it's all deep stuff, man. It just flows from you, so that's amazing. Yeah.
Oh, yo, respect, man, because honestly, like, you, no joke and no word of a lie, it's not because we're on this show or anything, but you're definitely one of the persons that I respect the most in this industry as well, and I know you actually about what you talk about, like, and it's easy, because just having a conversation like that with a person is enough to tell you about them. Like, it's enough to know that, like, I don't know you personally, but, like, I know that what you're saying, you're not just trying to cater to an audience. You're not just trying to pretend you're this person to, you know, tell I don't know, it's weird. And that's one of the things that people say, you know, well, when you're enlightened, you know, you get this awareness. It's not being enlightened, it's just being conscious. Like, it's being it's just being conscious that people have certain energies, have certain things, and when they tell you something, like these days, there's a lot of dudes that come and that hit me up and that tell me, like, yo, I want to work with you, I want to do this and that, or like, and I could just tell right off the bat, even on Facebook sometimes, you know, somebody hits me up, I look through like 4 of their posts and I like see some shit where it's like, yo, these hoes be like, and I'm like, okay, delete, I'm good, man, I don't need you as a friend. So, like, you can see through shit like that really, really quickly when people start talking, you know?
Yeah, you can judge and discern a lot of times what people's motives are. I've got a buddy of mine who has the Esoteric Empire page, and he's a huge fan of my music, and he's given me a platform over there to share my videos and stuff. And he deals with a lot of people. He gets those messages and inboxes and stuff all the time, and he gets the weird messages, man, and like and so he has his group, and he started the groups with other people, and then they're all trying to build their group up, their page up. He's at 40,000. They're trying to get 50. They're trying to get 60,000 likes, and they're trying to build these little empires. But my buddy at Esoteric Empire, it's like, that's funny, pun on words, empire. But I mean, he's like the real deal. Like, he's in it for the right reasons. When I've seen these other guys with these other big pages, they're in it to build followers and be teachers and be like, you know what I'm saying? Not that being a teacher is bad, but they're trying to get people under them. You know what I'm saying? They're trying to lord their knowledge over people. And then people are trying to involve me in that. And at this point in time, I don't care to do that anymore. Maybe at one point I may have wanted to rub shoulders with you guys, but I don't anymore. I'm not about that. I just want to see the manifestations of what you believe. I want to see the manifestations of your doctrine. I don't care to compare notes with you, honestly, if it doesn't affect the way that you live. Now we can, and I would love to, but if it doesn't affect the way that you live, if it doesn't affect the way that you treat your family. I think it was Manly P. Hall that said that, man's religion is in vain if the life of his dog isn't better. If he's, if the dad is still kicking the dog on the way out the door.
Yeah.
And I've got
dope, man.
And it's true though. I've got animals.
Yeah.
They do things, and you whip them and stuff, and it's like, you're not, you know what I'm saying? Now that I'm conscious of that, I'll always think about that. It's like, okay, is the life of my dog better due to my spirituality? And that's one of my tests.
Yeah, word.
It's one of my tests. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's something that I can measure it to, And,
I had 2 dogs back in the day. I still have 1, and I have 2 cats. And same thing, man. And I look at those beings like they're divine beings, man. They're divine creatures, man. Like, everything that I do to them, sometimes obviously there's certain things because of the restrictions on consciousness on animals that you cannot treat them exactly the same as you would to a child, but I like to think of them as like children in a sense, and not in the sense of my children, like I'm the parent, the authority figure, but more like, how can I actually help them to be everything that they're happy being basically, and help them evolve into what they're meant to be.
Yeah.
And I relate to that a lot, honestly. That's the thing. A lot of people think that too, and I think a lot of people that misinterpret me actually think. I mentioned that in one of the tracks from an album that's coming out with Ante soon. I'm like, on me prend pour un culte, on occulte mon son et mon but. Ce qui compte c'est l'imagination, je l'affûte jusqu'à ma satisfaction. So I'm saying people think that I'm a cult, and they're occulting, they're hiding my sounds and my goals. And then I'm saying what the most important thing is imagination, and I'm sharpening that, and I'm honing that until I'm satisfied with it. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot more after that, but basically the idea of a lot of people think I'm a cult, and they think that I want people to worship me as Kalki. I don't even want the name Kalki anymore. Facebook won't allow me to change my name anymore for legal reasons, because I've changed it too many times.
Yeah.
The day that they hit me up and tell me here, you need show us an ID, and we're going to change your name to that, I'll be happy, and I'll be like, you know what, let me switch it back to Anton Yorga, and I'll be very happy with that. I don't want to have that name, and I'm hoping to It's just that once you've had that for that long, you know, I don't want people either to think, I wouldn't want to switch and do, you know, what Son of Saturn did, and then people think like, oh, people still call him Saturn all the time, you know, and Aquaman, I should say. But, you know, and he was like, I don't want to have that name anymore. But the thing is, once you've had that name, it's a part of who you are, even if it's a past. So I was like, you know what, I want to try to live up to that. As much as I could never do it, I would still want to try to live up and be worthy as I humanly possibly can to that name, rather than just try to shun it and run away from it. So that's kind of like where I'm at with that. But I don't care about, like, man, like I care that people listen to my music because I want people to get something out of it and benefit from it. But anytime someone tells me, like, listen, yo, I'm a huge fan of yours, I'm like, nah, you're not a fan. I don't believe in fans, man. I believe in kindred souls. Like, I'll sit there and I'll build, and anyone can tell you. Like, I'll talk to them for hours. Someone has a, you know, 10-page conversation with me, I'll write back 10 pages to them, you know, to a certain extent, because obviously lately it's been more and more difficult with the number of messages. But
I won't. I'll just give them my phone number. I can't stand typing like that. Yeah.
I can do, I've done both. I have my phone numbers on my Facebook page, and I have my phone number is actually on the Revolt Motion page as well, in the Mutant Academy section. That's another thing I wanted to mention, because you mentioned, like, you know, I want to see what you've done with that. I want to see where you're going, what's your application of that knowledge. And so that's one of the biggest things I'd like to mention. For those that don't know about Mutant Academy, something that we started last summer, which is basically like it's a worldwide safe space for youth, but for like people of all ages, mutants of all ages. Basically, it's based on the idea of the X-Men and Professor X, and, like, you know, the Academy for gifted youngsters. So it's based on that, and what we were doing is addressing this need in the city in particular to, like, help the you know, youth that are mislabeled as homeless or addicted or chemically imbalanced, you know, that they say are mentally ill, and try to teach them, no, you're a mutant. You have, like, incredible creative capacities. You just have to hone these skills and use them properly, and then you can actually become more functional than people that are considered to be normal. We have, like, what I'm doing right now in my spare time outside of, like, my studies and teaching. I'm teaching a French class, and I'm doing my PhD right now in indigenous hip hop, worldwide indigenous hip hop. But, like, outside of that, I'm on my spare time, I'm actually running a youth safe space from my own house with my soulmate, Harley, and we're both managing that 24/7. Like, we get phone calls sometimes at 3 a.m. We go drive out in the middle of the night to go pick up someone that's having a mental health crisis, and we take them back and we give them, like, you know, herbal remedies. Like, we gave them, like, you know, chamomile or holy basil, or, you know, skullcap or valerian root, ashwagandha, you know, some calming sedatives so they can chill out, and then we've got a whole basement full of graffiti on the walls. They can spray paint, they can draw, they can paint, they can do whatever they want. We got a recording studio upstairs that they can use. And then we've got, like, a little library with a bunch of esoteric scriptures from across the planet, from east to west and beyond. Or they can just chill, and there's a spare bedroom too, and there's, like, another spare bed in the living room, and we're trying to get a couple more too, so people can just crash there for a couple of nights. Somebody just came, like, yesterday actually, and was just hitting me up, Sunshine Buffalo, amazing busker artist and guitar player, and so we've got, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is that, you know, and we have another one in Vancouver, which is run by Ali Dahesh and Observatory Records, and Ujval, and you know, Cody, aka DJ Billy Bishop, and, you know, Jakob Evolved is a part of that. Unknown Misery, you know, Behad, Bibi Kaseb. We've got so we've got 2 active academies right now, and we've got another one that we plan on building in Regina when I'm moving there this summer, and then we're going to build another one in Salt Spring Island within the end of the summer towards next year. And then I'm also supposed to be going to New Zealand, to Aotearoa, this summer, to actually go build another academy out there as well. So we're hoping that within the next 2 or 3 years we should have, like, at least 5 to 10 academies across the planet, and then, you know, build that to 50, 100, 200, whatever. You know, and basically have these youth support creative centers all over the planet for anybody that needs them. And this is, like, all entirely nonprofit. We're affiliated with, like, the local Amnesty International. We're affiliated with a bunch of other groups, like the Youth Action Project is another thing that I'm involved with too. That's a part of that. iHuman, that I've been working with, John Humphrey Center for Peace and Human Rights, Going Global initiative that I'm spearheading. I'm actually meeting with the mayor of the city next week in Edmonton, to actually give him a 20-point recommendation that me and a bunch of other youth activists in the city, like 6 or 7 of us, have worked on. And he's been implementing this since this is like a 2-year thing. It's been running on, and they've implemented a number of the laws that we've given them last year, like legislative changes, drastic changes to like basically completely change the face of the way that they treat homeless people, the way they treat First Nations, any ethnic minorities in the city, the sexualization and exploitation of like sex workers, a number of other issues. So we got like 20 different laws that we proposed to them this year that they're going to be implementing in the next year. And the plan is that this project is to eliminate poverty and to eliminate discrimination within the next decade. So that's just a little bit of what I've actually been working on in the city right now, and how I translate that knowledge and the stuff that I talk about in my tracks into actual action.
A little bit. That's a lot. That's a lot going on, man. You must stay busy, because I know you're in school, you're a student, and all kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, but the thing is, everything that I do, I love, right?
Yeah.
So, and a lot of people don't get that. To me, like, I would give like 100 times, 1,000, if not 1,000,000 times more credit to somebody that's working at a minimum wage, dead-end job that they fucking hate and they're struggling to do. I couldn't do that. I would probably have a mental breakdown within a week, and I couldn't handle that. like single moms, I know a couple of different ones, like one that I visit all the time that like, her kids are like nephews and nieces to me, and, she, she's like, she's struggling to raise 3 kids on a loan. Like the dad is abusive and fucked up. She's trying to do jobs on the side and do like whatever she can to survive. And other people I know, like some kids in India that are working in like freaking factories, like extracting dangerous metals from old scraps of heap, that are risking their whole lives dying when they're 12 or 13 from doing these jobs, getting paid 10 cents a day. Like, to me, somebody doing that kind of job deserves like 1,000 times more credit than I ever, or 1,000,000 times more credit than I ever do for doing what I'm doing. Because I'm doing what I love. Everything that I do is not even, it's not a chore, it's not a struggle. I enjoy every aspect of it, and I'm getting credit for it. So in the end, like, people are like, oh, how do you do that? And I'm like, man, it's nothing. Like, trust me, like, that's not even fucking hard. Like, look at other people on the planet, and that's the struggle.
Yeah. Yeah, I think everybody should do that, man. I'm striving to do that myself, and I'm trying to move to a place where I can do what I was put here to do. You know what I'm saying? And it's just a weird system that we're in, man. And some of us are just, just operating on default. And so we're just trying to inspire people to chase their goals and chase their dreams, while at the same time, we're trying to do them as well, Instead of just existing,
I feel you, man.
Or just helping someone else, you know what I'm saying, build their dream as far as like a corporation or something like that, working at corporations and stuff. So that's what I'm trying to move to. I'm thinking about opening up a business. Nervous about that, man, but excited at the same time. So.
No, that's the best way to do it, man. It's like follow your dreams. That's what I want to tell anybody, man. It's like, honestly, don't ever let anyone. People always tell you have to sacrifice shit in order to be happy in life, and you gotta yeah, sure, but like you don't have to sacrifice your happiness in order to make it. Like you don't have to think, oh, you're gonna have, people are like, oh, you're never gonna make money doing that. Don't do that. So what? Maybe you're going to get a government grant for it. Maybe you'll get somebody that sponsors you and that helps you out. Like, I make practically nothing. You don't even want it. Like, my salary on a yearly basis, if I'm lucky, I make like $25,000 a year. If I'm not, I make like 18 to 19. And I'm teaching like pretty much full time. And, I'm struggling with little translation contracts here and there. I make like, I'm basically, me and my soulmate right now are under poverty level, according to like guidelines in Edmonton, in the city that we're living in right now. But we're still doing great, and we eat healthy organic food, and we got everything we want, because we get, people helping us out left and right, because like we get what we put back into it. So we help out a bunch of people, and they end up helping us out in different situations. I end up getting random grants here and there. I get like a grant from school, or I get something else, and somebody, helps me. Just when I think that I'm broke as fuck, I owe like $30 on my credit card right now. I'm not even thinking about that, because I'm like, I'm good, man. Honestly, like I know that God and everybody else will provide for that. Like I know that all the people around me, like through that instrumentation of the Creator, is actually going to make it happen.
Well, yeah, man. Or anybody who's listening who want to support, he gives this music out for free. So you guys can go there and download the music and leave a donation, if you guys have it.
Yeah, and I just want to tell people too, if you're leaving a donation, like there's a donation thing on the Revolt Motion, www.revolt-motion.com. There's a bunch of like resources on there. Everything is free on there, like pretty much everything. There's a couple albums for sale if you want to donate and support that, support the artist directly. But if you want to donate to Revolt Motion specifically, that goes to my PayPal, and that goes into Mutant Academy account, and all of that goes to supporting what I was talking about with Mutant Academy. So that goes to funding the youth safe space, to helping to maintain the car that we're using to go help out people, the food that we're offering to them, like the medications, like the herbs, the herbal remedies, everything, like basically the sustaining of that, if you're donating to that. But I would say, honestly, like far before and beyond any of that, I would say go and donate to something that you truly and deeply believe in. Go donate to some kids in a third world country that need it more desperately than anyone in this situation. But do it like through something. Go do your research. Go look on charitynavigator.org. Go look at like independent websites evaluating these things. Don't just blindly donate to a religious charity that's trying to push some doctrines or dogmas like we were talking about to people. Try to support something. One of my favorite ones that I support a lot, because they have matched donations that sometimes they match up to 10, 11 times the amount that you're donating, is Planned Canada. If you look into like match gifts for Planned Canada, there's some gifts that you can donate like $70 and it turns into like $1,100. So, and that's not bullshit. Like they're a multinational, like they're a huge corporation, but they're entirely nonprofit. They're about 82% efficient in what they do. And out of that, through their publicities, they reinvest about 7% of it into promoting themselves, and through that they actually make back sometimes like 2 to 3 times that 7%. So they actually end up being more than 100% efficient in total. So every dollar that you're donating not only gets matched by other sponsors, but on top of that, it's not, because there's some of them, if you look on charitynavigator.org, they tell you like literally that charity is like 30% efficient. And that's why people don't believe in charities anymore, because like they look and they're like, oh, those guys are lying, they're bullshitting, they're stealing away the money, it's all going to administration. And it's true in many cases. The thing is, do your research. I get so many people telling me like, yo, I'm not going to donate to charity, it's all a bunch of bullshit. And I'm like, okay, so what are you doing then? Go like volunteer at a local soup kitchen, go help out a youth group, go help out some old lady in the street, help her carry her things because she's like breaking her back. Go do something. Don't tell me everything is bullshit and corrupted and then you're not doing shit all and you're going home and spending all your money on useless commercial crap that's been made in China by children that are being abused about things that you're not believing in because you don't think they make sense.
You heard the man. Make it happen. Anything else you want to plug before we get off of here?
I'm good, man. I just want to give respect to everybody that's been supporting, and I even want to respect, honestly, and I'm not saying that in some bullshit way, but I actually mean it. Like, thank you to everybody that's actually disbelieved in us. Thank you to everybody that's trying to destroy things. Thank you to, everybody that's tried to make my life worse as well as better, because in both cases, you need those polar oppositions. If I hadn't had those people telling me that, things were horrible and that, I'm worthless and I'm useless, I never would have become what I am today. And if I didn't, if I had nothing but people supporting me and doing a bunch of awesome stuff for me, maybe I'd be full of myself to the point where right now I'd be like, oh, I'm fucking on top of the world. Nobody can fucking beat me right now. And I'm like the most awesome person and I'm great. I still think that, a lot of the shit I do is questionable and dubious. And I still could reinvest my money a lot better than I do right now. But in the end, yeah, thank you to both sides. Like, I really appreciate that, regardless of what people have told me, a lot of the criticism has actually helped me become a better person. So, and thank you to you, man, for doing this today and for dealing with the fact that I talk way too fucking much.
No, it's all good. It's just, it's all good, man, because we got to do another one because there's still all of these other questions that I wanted to get into that we didn't even touch on. So we're definitely going to do another show very soon, man, if you're cool with that.
Oh, I'm down, man. Anytime, for sure, man. And I'd love to hear your part of it too, man, because I think a lot of people, like, you doing the shows, I'm sure they hear, like, little bits and pieces too, but I'd love for you to actually tell, like, a lot more. I have some questions for you too that I'd like to ask you, so definitely we should do that, man.
Yeah, we will, man. We will. Thanks so much for coming on, brother, and we're going to continue to build and push peace and love into the universe, man. Thanks so much for coming on.
Definitely. Hit me up about that track too, man. Hit me up about anything, honestly.
All right, brother. Good night, man.
Yo, peace and respect to everyone listening tonight.
Today's podcast is brought to you by webcreatorpros.com. If you're looking for a professional website at an affordable price, head on over to webcreatorpros.com, type in the promo code TRUTH to save $200 on your first website. webcreatorpros.com. This episode is also brought to you by Kendall Shoulders in his new book, Jesus is a Worm and a Snake Too, among other things. JesusIsAWorm.com. Trust me, don't let the name fool you. We had Kendall on the show to discuss some of the topics mentioned in the books, and it was by far one of the best podcasts that I've ever done. Check it out, JesusIsAWorm.com.
If you would like to sponsor the show or advertise on the Mythicist podcast, you can do so by going to www.mythicist.me and click on Sponsor the Show for more info. If you would like to support the show financially, you can do that also by going to mythicist.me and become a monthly supporter. We appreciate your monthly support.
Won't you come and take me